Well, welcome. My name is Carl Williamson, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself later. But today you've joined me in Sickness and in Health presentation, talking about the impact that cancer has on your marriage. So hopefully today you'll be learning a few things that will help you and your spouse or your partner get through this cancer journey a little bit better. Well, my name is Carl, as I said a moment ago, and I'm the manager of pastoral care here in Zion, Illinois at City of Hope CTCA. And I'm a professional chaplain, and also I manage the department. So I'm still able to go and round on the floor and see patients and family members and staff and encourage them and help them and support them through the journey. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and my wife. I'm married to my lovely wife, Cheryl, of 30 years, this coming March 28th. So we're really excited about that. We have 4 adult children, 3 boys and 1 girl. We have 3 daughter-in-laws that we love very much. And we also have our first grandchild, Colton. He was born December 30th, 2020. And I will show you a picture of Cheryl and Colton and myself. Isn't he cute? Cheryl and I have provided premarital counseling for couples in the last 10 years, off and on, and it is a privilege to be able to do that, to help prepare married couples to be prepared for the journey ahead in marriage. So that has been something that we've enjoyed doing, and it's been a privilege to be able to walk alongside these young couples. We teach currently 3rd and 4th graders in Sunday school. For the last 7 years, we've been doing that and then also volunteering as leaders in our senior high youth group, working with the young men and women in our youth group. And then Cheryl co-leads a Bible study with young high school women. And then also she has been a speaker and also served as a volunteer in the mothers of preschoolers. I have been a leader in my church and the church that I pastored in as an associate pastor. And then occasionally I fill in for Grief Share. It's a support group. And I do that at our local church here in town. And then I enjoy singing. So in the choir. I also, a little bit about my education. I have a BS in theology and then my master's in management and leadership. And then I've also studied clinical pastoral education. So I have my 4 units of education there. And then Cheryl, just a little bit about her education. She went to school and wanting to teach. So she got her teaching degree in elementary ed, and she taught 2nd graders at a local grade school in town. And then she became a homeschool teacher for our 4 kids up until all of them went to high school. So we know that if you've been through the journey, if you're married and you've been through the cancer journey, you can answer this question. We know that the cancer journey impacts a marriage. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the areas of marriage that could be impacted by cancer? So what are some of the areas that have impacted maybe you and your spouse? So I'll just give you a few moments to think about that. And then I'll share with you some things that I've written down that I have seen or have heard from couples who are going through the cancer journey. And you can continue to write if you'd like, and that way you'll have these things written down so you can review later with your spouse. So what are some of the areas in marriage that could be impacted by cancer? Good communication, enjoying intimacy, money, keeping up the home, having fun, and keeping one's marriage vows. So these are some of the topics or concerns that married couples have when they're going through the cancer journey. Let me ask you a question. How did you as a couple communicate with one another during your dating or your courtship versus after you got married or even married with kids. And then, of course, after the diagnosis and on as you've been on the cancer journey. What are the differences? I wanted to tell you a different story that Cheryl and I had. When I was dating Cheryl, it was about being with her. It was about rushing home. I was from work to see her in the town that she lived in. And I would get off work and I would try to find the quickest route. Where's the traffic at? Avoid it, Carl, at all costs, so you can go to see Cheryl. You'll have more time with her. And of course, I moved closer to where she lived while we were dating, and then and got engaged. So I was really wanting to be with her. And in our dating process, we went on a date after she got back from Missouri. She was going to a training for her education as a teacher. And she flew back into O'Hare, and I went and picked her up. And before that, I had chosen a restaurant we were going to and got dressed up for it. And we went to the restaurant. We had a great time, but all my focus was on her, what she was saying, how she looked. I even was, Cheryl told me a story later that she saw me looking at her lips, and she's like, I don't know what this guy's doing, but she just kept talking. And later she told me that she was wondering what I was thinking when I looked at her that way. Well, I was thinking, how come I going to be able to kiss this girl? So I was focusing so much on her lips. That's what dating couples do. They spend a lot of time listening to each other, spending time, dedicated time to each other, and being close to each other, and wanting to be intimate with each other. And then how do you compare that to after you get married? Well, they're very similar, and Cheryl and I's relationship was still loving and caring and wanting to get to know each other and be close to one another. But it changed a little bit. We won each other. We've gotten each other, so we're a little bit more content, but we still are close, and we want to grow to know each other and understand each other more. Then we had kids, and that changed a little bit more of how we communicated. And more kids in the room, everybody's talking, and we had 4 of them. So as you can imagine, if you had kids, you can imagine what that would be like. Well, what about after the diagnosis? Cheryl and I have not had diagnosis with cancer. Unlike some of you may have had the dating, the married with kids, and then the cancer journey started. And so that affects good communication. So, and we know that to be true. So what makes the difference between dating and married? I wanted to share a few things here. You can write some things down if you want. You can talk to each other. What made the difference between for you guys? But here's some things that made a difference for me. The familiarity. So once we're dating, we didn't know each other well. We're trying to get to know each other, and mentally, physically, and even spiritually. For Cheryl and I, as Christians, we really wanted to know what each other thought about spirituality and how we were going to live if we got married. So that could be true with you as well. So familiarity in those 3 areas. Careers started to pop up, and after education, we started to develop, and we had our careers. We had full schedules with kids, with work, and therefore there was less time for us to be together. And then I mentioned children. And then for most of you, if not all of you, there was a diagnosis, and then you had to live with cancer, doctor's appointments. You had to get treatments. There were maybe events that you were going to, even with cancer fighters. You're now a part of them, and it's an exciting thing to be able. Something you guys can do together. So there are things that make it a difference between dating and being married, and then also going on the cancer journey. One of the principles that I wanted to start off with is in regards to good communication is this poetic language that was written by Solomon in the Proverbs. It's from Proverbs 25. It's an Old Testament. It's a Jewish writing, and it paints this word picture of good communication. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. Like apples of gold. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. This kind of beauty should be the goal of all your communication. What the proverb was saying was that we need to have words and speak words that fit the setting that we want to communicate to the listener. It's got to be words that are chosen, that fit the conversation. They're what we want to say and communicate. And we actually think about that so much that when we do that, we speak that way, the listener actually sees it as gold, as settings in silver. It's something that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. So it's attractive to the listener. So that's the kind of words we want to use in good communication. Something that the listener really does want to understand and hear. Good communication. How do you develop good communication? Well, I was intrigued by this book called The Argument-Free Marriage. Fawn Weaver wrote this book, and actually her husband, he did read it as he was writing it, and he was one of her critics, but she quickly won him over. His name is Keith. So we have Fawn and Keith Weaver, and she shared about how can you have an argument-free marriage? And I wanted to share a few of the things that she said. And I think that really helps us develop good communication. No judgment was the first thing. Don't judge your spouse and what they say, what they do. Don't let that be the first reaction that you have. So good communication would be to show love and grace. That would be your first response. And then you would discuss it and then you would critique each other in conversation. But I wanted to share a definition, and Fawn Weaver also is a Christian. So she wanted to, and she speaks in her book, not so much about her faith, though that is what is her North Star. It's something that she wants to share. And one of the things she said is respond in love and grace. And I wanted to read to you her definition of love that she shared. And it comes from 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It's not rude. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails. Who wouldn't want to be treated that way? I know I would. I often don't treat everybody that way, especially if I'm getting heated and starting to show some of that disagreement or argumentativeness. We all have been there. We all done it. But our goal is to love people that way, the way that Fawn described it, using the text from the Bible. But also providing grace. Grace is unmerited favor, something that we don't deserve. We didn't earn it. And that's something that we need to provide to our spouses is grace. Maybe they don't deserve to be forgiven. Maybe they don't deserve the time or the response. Maybe they don't deserve you turning the other cheek. When they're doing something that you don't like, but you're talking softly. They're raising their voice, but you're going to talk softly. You're going to be graceful. You're going to provide that kind of grace in that situation. So that's what she would say, is be loving and gracious to people. Then listen carefully. We'll talk about listening for the guys a little bit later, but she says, listen carefully, and the operative word is carefully. Choose to listen and to find out what a person is actually saying so that you can understand it. And not only that, to repeat it back to them. So listen carefully. Then take time out. So if you're in a discussion with your spouse and it's getting heated and it sounds like it's going to turn into an argument, say, hold on a second, time out. Can we agree to take a time out right now? Because I really just want to go take a little walk around the block. And then when I get back, can we start over again? We'll talk about it then. So allowing each other to have the freedom to have time to process what you were thinking. So that could really help stop an argument. And then 5 words of prevention. She said to her husband, Keith, here's 5 words of prevention. I think we should use it. We should pray about this. That's her 5 words of prevention. We should pray about this. And it's really helped them. Of course, she testifies that it does help. And I would imagine if you're very sincere about praying, it would help. She also gives an exercise at the end of the chapter that I read. I've read the book, but in this chapter, can you list 6 things I could do to become a better spouse? You could ask each other this question, and then you could respond. If you have a spouse who doesn't want to do this, then you could actually write, are there 6 things that I could do to be a better spouse for my husband or for my wife? So it's an exercise that you could do. Cheryl and I did this. Actually, it wasn't that easy. It was actually hard. I came up with a couple, maybe 2 for, I really was challenged by it. So it'll be challenging for you too, but I think it's a really good exercise. It's just one way of communicating to each other and understanding each other. All right, so good communication. Husbands, I want to talk to you a little bit. Here's something that Jim George, he's been married now over 50 years since writing his book. And his wife also has a companion book for wives. How to Improve Your Communication. It's shared by Jim George. A Husband After God's Own Heart is the name of the book. In that book, he writes about using an acrostic called speech. And I wanted to go through that with you. I thought it was very beneficial. And also something that us guys, we could understand the way he wrote it. And that is true with the ladies too, in the next slide that we'll be discussing. For Elizabeth. S, swift, in your listening. Be swift in your listening. Swift to hear, slow to speak. So men, husbands, we need to be swift in listening. And sometimes we're swift to snap back or not listen at all. But we need to listen to our wives. And I think it's great that he starts with this, because that's where it starts. We need to stop, slow down, and not talk so much, but to be able to listen to our spouses. And then P is prudent. Be prudent in your words, being mindful of what you say, being purposeful, having it fit. It's a proper word or conversation that you're having with your spouse. So that's prudent. E, empathetic in your voice. This is similar to the careful listening. So being empathetic in your voice, when you talk about hot topics like politics or religion, or whatever the topic is that gets everybody heated in your home, you want to talk empathetically. When you want to talk with a soft voice, because a soft voice turns away wrath. So if somebody's getting heated up in your conversation, someone needs to kind of talk softly and not use those harsh words that will stir up anger and get everybody all riled up, and then you're not talking at all. So that's a good one. Empathetic, be empathetic in your voice. And then E for edifying your approach. Avoid unedifying words that build up. Use words that build up. For example, in Ephesians 4, the Apostle Paul is talking to these individuals about their relationships as couples and about the words that they use. And he says, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. What he's saying is, don't use corrupt words, and use words that actually build up a person, that actually encourages them. It does something good for them, to that person. And the opposite would be to use words that hurt, they break down, they separate, cause fraction. Don't use those words. So men, we need to build up our wives. And then C, calming every issue. Imagine a one-sided boxing match. You have the red trunk boxer over here on this corner of the boxing ring, and then you have the blue over here boxer in that corner of the ring, and the bell rings and the red comes out to box and the blue just stays in a corner. What happens? There's no fight. There's no boxing match going on, because it's not going to happen, because that other person isn't going to fight. They're going to calm the situation. They're going to say, I'm sorry. If you need to say, I'm sorry, men, we should be the first ones to do it. We could be the ones that say, will you forgive me? Those are some of the hardest words to say for every human being. But I think men, we should be the leaders in this area. And I found it a struggle myself. My wife, she's gentle, she's not argumentative, but there are times when I've done something wrong and I had to go to her and I say, I'm sorry. And even then, to her, I have to apologize, but sometimes I struggle to do it. So I know from my 30 years of marriage, I've had to do that a few times, or to go back to her and say, you know what, you were right, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And I wait for a response. And then usually she forgives me. Well, every time she's forgiven me, because we have to. We want to forgive each other, and we do. So men, calm the situation. And then H, honoring the truth of your words. Great trust takes years to obtain, but can be lost instantly with the least of lies. Always be honest with your wife, men, and be truth tellers. So that makes a huge difference, as you know. So good communication for you men. Speech, remember that acrostic. I want to show you a video about sympathy. It talks about the differences between sympathy and empathy, but I want you to focus on, what does it mean to be sympathetic towards your spouse or towards another person? And you'll be able to hear Brene Brown. She has done a lot of research on sympathy.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Um, Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
All right. What makes things better is connection. I like that. Hopefully you have a better understanding of what empathy is and how we should practice it compared to sympathy. And we need to be have that empathetic voice. We need to have the careful listening. Those involve empathy involves both of those. All right, so let's talk about good communication for wives. How do you improve your communication? Well, I was reading Elizabeth George's book, and these are some of the things that she said in her book, A Wife After God's Own Heart. She wrote the following words to help wives remember to communicate well. I love the principles of what she's saying. I love the words that she uses. So I really think that, as you hear them, you'll see the benefit of them. So speaking softly, women, when you speak softly, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. This is true with men and women, but she decided that let's start there, women, and talk softly, and that will turn away a wrath of your husband. Sweetness of the lips increases learning or influence. Well, when I was reading this, I thought about the ladies, like your mom talking to a child. When she talks softly and sweetly to them, they respond in a childlike way that's soft and sweet instead of being crude and quick to respond. I thought about when you see women who are talking sweetly to a man, how she wins them or she influences them. And the man basically sometimes becomes like putty when a woman is talking sweetly to him. And I know that's true in my wife. When she talks sweetly to me, I'm listening. And so it does open our ears. It softens the heart of a man when a woman talks sweetly to them. Choosing suitable words. You want to choose words that are pleasant like honeycomb. Honeycomb is sweet. Have you ever chewed? Well, of course, if you like honey, it's delicious. And nothing like honey, fresh honey on toast and butter. That's really good. It is sweet. And it's like medicine, really. It brings medicine to the body and the soul. It affects the mind. Those suitable words, we don't have to struggle to listen to them. They make sense. They're purposeful. So you could be choosing words that are suitable for your spouse to hear. And then scant. She uses the word scant here. Don't talk too much. That's what she's saying. You can be putting your foot in your mouth and when you talk too much. Using less words. And then slow. Make it your aim to listen much, speak little, and not become angry. We talked a little bit about this with the men. being quick to hear and slow to speak. Elizabeth is mentioning that for the ladies as well. The next topic I want to talk about is enjoying intimacy. Intimacy is more than sex. That's what the Georges said. And they've been married a long time, and they've had to learn, especially us guys would have to learn that intimacy is more than sex. I'm putting the emphasis on the guys because I'm a guy and I need that emphasis. So when I read this book for the first time, I learned a few things. Intimacy is a close friendship. It's more than sex. It's about developing a close friendship. Good thing for Cheryl and I, we actually started off as friends in college, and it didn't become more than that right away. It wasn't until after she graduated, I left school, and I graduated 4 years later, and that we met again, and we started our friendship all over again, and I took over from there. But it needs to be a good friendship first. You should continue to nurture that friendship, that closeness with your spouse, who you want to become your most intimate friend, your buddy. A lot of times guys have buddies, and your buddy should not be a better friend than your spouse. Guys, we need to work on that. We need to make sure that our wives are our buddy, that she's the one that's most important to us. She's the one that's our closest friend, and it should be your spouse. Intimacy is a mood. It's a feeling, an attitude, or a state of mind. Usually it's expressed by going to a certain place. Really could be anywhere. It could be a corner booth or your favorite restaurant. Could be the kitchen table. Cheryl and I, during COVID, I actually set up, before she got home, set up the table, put candles on the table. They were electric candles, by the way. You could use those. You don't have to use fire, so you could use electric batteries. And then I set out the napkins, and I just made it. I turned the lights down, so when she got home, it was set like that, and that was my attempt at romantic. Guys, I don't do that all the time. It takes thought for me to develop these types of things. So it's not my forte. It doesn't come easy, but it should. And I know that I need to continue to work on it. And these things are important to Cheryl, to my spouse. And so I have to work on it. So I'll choose a certain restaurant, or I'll go for a walk with her. And one of the best times for our communication, having good communication, is when we go for a walk. And we both agree upon it. We talk a lot then. And then we've gone to the beach to listen to the waves, just watch the waves in the park and watch them. And then we go to a park sometimes for a picnic, or just to go and sit on a picnic table and talk. And then intimacy is understanding. How do you get to know and understand another person? By spending time with him or her. It's a constant battle for us to stay connected, because every couple, you both have been growing, you've been maturing, and you've been changing. And especially with the cancer diagnosis, things changed drastically. It could have been 180 degrees. Life is so different. It's almost flipped upside down. And now you're having to try to communicate and do it well. And that can be difficult at times because of all that you guys are experiencing. So we know it's hard, and we know it's possible, though. Many like yourselves have done it, and they continue to do it, and they continue to improve on it. It takes a lot of work, but you can do it. A couple's once intimate communion can be lost overnight, over time, through the busyness of life, healthcare, and due to unintentional neglect. So when we're saying this, we're not saying that you're doing it on purpose. It just happens. It's unintentional. And that's why we need to intentionally work towards keeping you together, and keeping you communicating together, keeping you intimate, so that you're strong in your relationship as you're going through a very difficult time, the cancer journey. Another intimacy is more than sex, is intimacy is a close physical relationship. I wanted to read his Jim George's quote here. Exactly, how can you keep this intimate passion burning for the life of a marriage? To repeat, it all starts with the fuel of a faithful friendship, mutual respect, and clear communication. And now we add that it also requires a decisive commitment to stand watch over the fire of sexual intimacy, to stoke it, to rekindle it, to do whatever it takes to keep it burning, even if that means going to the mall, shopping. And men, I can go shopping with my wife, and I enjoy it for about 15 to 30 minutes. After that, I'm done. Cheryl can actually tell when the lights have gone out, and she says, "You're ready to go, aren't you?" And I go, "Yes, I'm ready to go." But I do it for her because I want to be with her. I know that it's important to her that I'm there, that I would actually care enough to go shopping with her. And usually when we go shopping, it's like we went on a date and we're doing multiple things. And I would say, "Hey, you want to go to the store? You want to go shopping?" And I would shock her. Usually it surprises her. And she's very thankful, and she appreciates that I would want to do that with her. And to be honest with you, it's fun for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and she knows that. So at least I'm going and trying. So physical relationship, that sexual physical relationship is very important. So I'm going to read this from, let's see here. Communicate openly about sex. That's what they gave an exercise to practice that. So you want to communicate openly about it. It can be very difficult to do, and sometimes it's impossible without help of another objective person, like a sex therapist or a counselor. Maybe you even both decide, well, let's read a book on this and let's try to figure it out, because it's an important part of your intimacy is your sex life, your sex relationship. One counselor reported the need for sexual intimacy with couples is very much present. So there's a great need still. He quote, time and time again, husbands of all ages expressed that sexual fulfillment was #1 on their top 5 list of the most basic needs. Yet when their wives were asked for the same information, sex did not appear at all on their top 5 list. So what does that tell you? Men and women think differently about sex, about the acting of the motion, the physicalness of sex, and why we're doing it. So men were different than our wives, and we need to understand that. We need to appreciate that respect for our wives and how they view sex, and vice versa. The wives will want to respect, understand their husband as well regarding sex. And how do you do that? And really, you need to talk about it. So some of us will be better than others about that, but there's always hope for getting better at communicating about sex. Enjoying intimacy. Here's an exercise that, well, I said exercise, but this is some of the things that I thought of as well. Go to bed at the same time. It's hard to talk or get to know each other or get close physically if one of you is watching TV or on your phone out in another room. Take care of yourself. Walk with your spouse and talk. Like we mentioned, going for a walk, going to the park, spending time with each other. It's known that if you go for a walk and you do that 5 days a week, and you do it 300 throughout the year, you're going to approximately lose 12 pounds. So statistically, that's true. And the Georges actually wrote about that. And I thought, oh, wow, that's cool. I mean, I can just walk and lose weight, and you won't be having to change your eating habits. That's what they said. And that's a good thing. So you be able to grow in your communication with your wife, get to understand each other better, and then also taking care of yourself. Making up quickly. That's so important. Do not go to bed angry is good advice for a couple. Now, Cheryl and I know that, so we've been practicing that since we were married, and before that, when we were dating, we would separate. We had to go home to our different apartments, and sometimes we just had to make sure that we weren't angry when we left. I don't know, I'm not trying to say this out of pride, but if Cheryl was here, she could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was only one time that Cheryl and I have ever gone to bed angry. And what I mean by angry is we didn't kiss each other goodnight. We rolled over and faced our other way, our backs to each other, to the ends of the bed, and there was no conversation. And then when we woke up, it was still like, no, we're not talking. So eventually, we started communicating and forgave each other, or I'm not sure who forgave who or who said I'm sorry first. Maybe it was me. No, I don't know. Only because maybe I'm the one who did something wrong. So do not go to bed angry. Make up quickly. Schedule a getaway. One of the best ways to keep the fires of passion burning in both of you is to get away on a regular basis. With your busy schedules, with treatments and all that, getting away could be difficult, but could be beneficial, even if it was for hours or for a day or for a weekend. Just spending time with you without having to think about the things of home and the things of medical care, family, children. So make time for a getaway. Now, I wanted to talk about your vows, your wedding vows. Maybe you wrote your own, you memorized your own, and you still have them memorized right now. I don't. I know I wrote good ones, but these are not it. These are kind of basic religious vows that most people use, and mine were similar, but Cheryl and I wrote our own and kind of tweaked. We took this and tweaked it and made it our own. So for better or for worse, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death to do us part, according to God's holy ordinance. And thereto I pledge myself to you. I think it's good to remember your vows and to remember saying them to each other, and even kind of recreating what it might have been on your anniversary, or maybe your 25th anniversary, or someone's 30th anniversary that's coming up really soon. I have seen men, and I'm sorry to say that I've seen two marriages over 15 years where the spouse leaves and cannot handle the situation with going through treatment. We don't want that. No one wants that. So we need to work on good communication and that intimacy that's more than sex, but working on that, both of those, and remembering the vows that you made, so that your marriage will be strong and that it will be honoring to you both and to your family and to those who are watching you. You'll be a testimony to them about love for one another. And maybe for you, like me, it's the love that God has for us and that we have for him. So people can see that love, that strong love relationship. So say your vows. Here's an exercise. Say your vows in an intimate way, on a getaway to each other, or on your anniversary. Renew your vows on a special anniversary anytime, for just the two of you, or getting a chaplain or a pastor, your pastor, to do that just for the three of you being there, or invite your family, your friends, have a celebration, reception afterwards. That could be something that you could do to keep your vows fresh and before both of you. And happy Valentine's Day. It's around that season, February. These really do apply anytime. So here's some ideas for a date anytime. Homemade meal and a movie, and a movie that goes a long way for keeping the fires burning. Go for a drive together, recalling memories at your wedding. pulling out the wedding album. I know for us, we move my wife moves the furniture around, and the album is in a certain location. And so when she moves the furniture around, we dust it off. And then while we're dusting it off, we usually open it up on purpose and just start looking at it. And all of a sudden, the flames start burning, and it's like, oh, remember the day, and it gives us those warm feelings. Game night together with no phones. Quiet night looking at the photo albums. I mentioned the wedding album, but just looking at the albums of your dating and your relationship thus far. And then lastly, I wanted to just give you I found this, it's called Questions for Humans. It's by Dr. John Deloney. It says, whether you've been together for 2 months or 20 years, starting a good conversation can be hard, but it doesn't have to be. Mental health expert Dr. John Deloney wants to help you navigate conversations and improve your relationships. That's why he's developed Questions for Humans. These conversation starters for couples will help you put your phones down and actually connect. So I saw a few of them, and they're pretty good. Cheryl and I have had a similar tool to help us communicate better, but I thought this would be a really good, what's new and innovative. So I think you guys would enjoy it. Check it out on the web. You can look it up, Questions for Humans. Well, I want to say thank you for joining me during this time, taking time out of your schedule. And I hope that you as a couple can really grow in good communication and your intimacy towards one another, and then renewing your vows and keeping those vows strong, not only for you, but for those around you, and for people needing to see strong marriages persevere through the most difficult times in one's life. So God bless you, and I pray that you have a beautiful day, a beautiful time with each other, with your spouse and your significant other. Take care.